მოგესალმებით ყველას. ჩემი დღევანდელი სტუმარი არის ეს არაჩვეულებრივი ადამიანი, რომელიც დღეს დამთანხმდა, რომ ჩემთან ერთად იყოს. I literally just said that I'm very thankful for you for this interview. Thank you so much for being here, Kate. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, well, first, thank you so much for inviting me to chat. I'm very excited. Ever since I was diagnosed back in 2017 when I was 11. 3 months later, I became very involved in the diabetes community, and I really wanted to make a difference and have people see it positively. When I was diagnosed, I never chose to feel negatively. It was very like, I'm gonna take this and be positive. And 3 months later, my mom and I started my SugarDrop Sweetwear, where we started making clothes at a garage sale, and the name
Whoa,
shop
that's so
and
cool.
the name SugarDrop came from my mom used to joke saying like go get a sugar drop as like checking my blood sugar,
Oh,
which
I
was so
know.
cute. And my mom, go.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna say my mom, she's very crafty and creative, so that's where the idea of like creating clothes and like our bracelets and like that whole design aspect of the company was very like initially crafted by my mom.
I know you mentioned that you never thought of diabetes as something negative. Do you think your friends or family or parents really helped you with transitioning to diabetes and life with diabetes? Because I know most of the time I get these questions from the parents about like, how can I help my kid? How can I help them
Hmm.
learn how to live with diabetes? And when the parent doesn't have diabetes and they don't really understand what it's like to live with diabetes, I feel like sometimes
Hmm.
they feel guilty. Most of the time they say, I wish I had it. I wish my kid didn't have it. So
Yes.
I really want to hear about what you think about it.
Definitely in the beginning, my mom was very like, why did she have to get this? Like, why couldn't it have been me? Like, she had so much guilt that I was having to deal with it every day. And I think especially her finding out that this was something I'd have for the rest of my life and dealing with it every day all the time, like that was, me being 11, I was like, no, I didn't understand like what
Yeah,
that was
same.
gonna, like, what
I
that
was,
really meant.
Mhm.
But to my mom, like it was hard for her. I know in the first 2 months, like my mom was crying like time, and it was so hard. And the biggest thing that helped my mom was finding other parents, joining like on communities online and talking to other parents where they could, especially parents of kids that have had it for a while, like giving them my mom comfort and like support and um ways to help me manage it, but like that burden as a parent that your kid has it and all you can do is support. Like you're not gonna understand it like them, but you also can't just like grab it and do it for them. Like
Right.
it's building that support and connection with your
Mhm.
kid. Definitely like my mom, 'cause especially me being 11, like not understanding a lot of it, I was scared with the needles. Like my mom helped me a lot with it, and I'm very grateful for the help that she gave me. I don't think I would be as independent as quickly as I was when I was younger, um, without my mom's like encouragement and support. I think the biggest thing well with my mom and I is that we would take small steps with things. Initially, my mom was helping me put on my continuous glucose monitor, and she was doing my needles for me, and because I was
Really
like
scared,
I
right?
was like this, yeah, I was like I can't do this myself. And then we took small steps within the next couple months. Like here and there, I would do my own insulin shot, or there were specific spots where I like doing it. So those kind of small steps with my mom really helped. Um, I think I think my mom coming around realizing that I could do these small things on my own gave her the confidence of, okay, like my daughter has
Mhm.
this, but it's gonna be okay and she can manage it, and as long as I support her,
Mhm.
um, she'll be happy with living with type
No,
1?
I totally, that's a great advice. I was also thinking about at what age did you start managing your diabetes? You know, it's
Uh,
such a like I'm trying to think back, thinking about my life, and I don't really remember when did I actually start doing it on my own.
Wait,
Because
Liz,
I feel
remind
like
me, what age were you diagnosed again?
I was either 7 or 8. I don't
Okay.
remember.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, so I don't really remember my life before diabetes. I just remember like hospital, being in the ICU, just doctors, the nurses giving me shots, not explaining anything to me. And then, going home and thinking that, I was in the hospital because of XYZ, and then
Mhm,
thinking that was the last time I got my shot, but then going home and realizing my life is different now. I
mhm,
can't just be like other kids. Um, and I never really had a school nurse. So my mom, like sometimes my grandma had to sit outside the school. They had to wait for me. They had to give me the shot. They
mhm,
had to monitor me. When I was diagnosed, I did not have the pump. I also didn't have my sensor. So I
mhm,
was fully MDI. I was basically just old school, pricking my fingers.
mhm,
Um, but also I was really ashamed of it. When
mhm.
I first got diagnosed, I think none of my friends knew about it. Not until I grew up, not until I feel like I started freely talking about diabetes when I was like 14 or like 15. That's when I moved to the States. And that's when I started seeing other people, meeting other people
Mhm.
with diabetes. And I was like, it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, I think I feel like it's more common that it's such an adjustment period to be open with people about it. And most diabetics that I've talked to, like, it took them a long time to feel that confidence. And it's a vulnerable thing, even though it's like for us, it's 24/7. Like, sharing that side of our lives can be really hard. I think my company SugarDrop was really my way of like expressing what I had had or what I have, what I had had. And when I was that age, like I didn't go back to school right away because like that I didn't like you, I didn't have a nurse at my school. We had like our like I guess our receptionist at the school, like the front desk
Mhm.
lady. And so she would help me and I didn't want to do my needles in class, so I would go to her like office at lunch to do my insulin shot because I also wasn't on a pump. My first 2 years, I was doing the multi-daily injections because I was waiting for a specific pump to come to be available in Canada. So I
Mhm.
chose to stay on needles. And the first 2 months I was back at school, I was doing them in the office because I was like, I don't want my classmates to see me. I don't want them to,
Know that I have diabetes, right?
like, I think because I remember I was out of school for 2 months being sick, and then like another month while I was trying to figure out how to manage diabetes, I was like, I can't go back to school just so learning with my mom and my doctors. And then when I went back to school, I was doing them at the nurse's office. And then eventually, like I think near the end of that school year, I was doing my needles in class. And this is when I was telling my closer friends and
Wow.
the kids in my class were, asking questions like they kind of knew I had type 1 because my teacher had my classmates like this is why Kate was out of school. She was sick in the hospital and has type 1 diabetes, but even my teacher like she didn't really know what it was. She just told everyone and that was that. And obviously 11-year-olds are going to be like
What
what
is
is that? Like
that?
so explaining it
Not
to my
even
friends
just
was kind of
11 years old. I feel like many adults, they don't know what's type 1 diabetes and
yeah.
they just say, oh, did you eat sugar? That's how you got it?
Yeah, it's very because type 2 is so much more
Yeah.
what
Common.
diabetes
Mhm.
is. That type 1 kind of gets um I guess shadowed by one is or by what type 2 is. So there was a lot. Like I experienced that a lot when I went to my friends' houses and their parents were like, "Oh, sorry, like we don't have anything sugar-free in the
Right.
house," or like, "Can you eat for dinner? Like, I'm so sorry." And I know a lot of them are obviously being very, because like they were trying to make me feel safe in the house and that everything was okay, but it's it's just also that feeling of like not being educated, and then also
Right.
as a diabetic feeling like having confidence to say like no,
I
like I
can
can
eat
eat
that.
anything.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I can eat that. I just need to take insulin and I have to carb count for it, and kind of speaking up. And I think that that was definitely my biggest thing, speaking up for myself in
Mhm.
relation to like stereotypes and things like that. Didn't happen till I was in high school. I was very open about having type 1, but if there was something I wasn't comfortable with, or the miscommunications that made me feel uncomfortable, and like I was treated kind of like differently, I wanted to
Mhm.
be the same. Like, or, and in some ways, because I was so open about my type 1, it was like, oh, she's with diabetes. Like, Kate has diabetes. And it was very like, and then people would say, like, oh, like, I can't eat sugar. And it just, I was like, I had to develop the confidence to speak up and say, like, not even speak up, but just educate and have people understand what it really is. Um, so that they're not continuously spreading these misconceptions about type 1.
Um, so I never wanted to share anything about type 1. My classmates, they had no clue that I had. And I feel like at some point that's scary and dangerous because you want other people
Mhm.
to be aware of that, right? Also, you brought up a really nice point about eating and diet. Um, there's like so many stereotypes about people with diabetes. I don't even like saying diabetics because that does not define us, right? People with
Mhm.
diabetes, they can't eat certain foods. And currently I'm really fighting that right now because in Georgia, certain products still say like diabetic friendly, like
Mhm.
certain breads, certain ice creams, certain chocolates, or they say like sugar-free diabetic chocolate. And every time I try to
Mhm.
explain, it might be sugar-free, it might be good for people who don't want to eat sugar, but we're not allergic to sugar. So can you please talk
Yeah.
about food choices or like what do you eat in a day? That's very interesting.
I definitely, as being a content creator, I've wanted to share about like what I eat in a day, because I can eat whatever I want that day. I could eat really healthy one, eat like super unhealthy one day, and it's just like I have to
Right.
carb count and take insulin for it. And but it's that stigma that we cannot eat sugar and that we have to diet. And it's because like diabetes just as a whole becomes an idea that it's a diet thing and we need to eat better and we won't have diabetes. Like I've had many people in my life, especially adults, tell me like, why don't you just eat better and you won't have diabetes? And it's so hard for me. Like it's not like it's frustrating in a way, but it's also like I didn't know what type 1 was before I was diagnosed.
It was I think I saw this TikTok. I love influencers. I love content creators just because they're spreading awareness. And I recently saw this girl who was having a low blood sugar, and I think she was running and she saw like a strangers and she was like, just letting you know that, I have diabetes, I'm having a low blood sugar. If something happens, please call 911. And I was thinking how amazing she is.
Only times I've had to like, I guess, tell a stranger about like my low blood sugar or something is if like when I've started at a new job.
Mm,
I've like kind of,
yeah.
because I've maybe tell like my manager that like in the interview, like, oh, I have type 1 diabetes, just to let you know. And then when it comes to like I'm actually at a shift and I'm like having a low blood sugar during the shift, I'm like telling like my coworker, like, my blood sugar's low, like I need to go to the break room and eat sugar. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, like I just like when I have low blood sugar, like I shouldn't be like like standing and working. Like I need to like focus in on make sure I'm okay. Like I don't feel well. Um,
Something that I love to do is that if I don't want to say out loud that, like I have type 1 diabetes, I love to show my devices. If they can see my device, it kind of makes it real, you know?
Yeah, I most of the time I'll take out my insulin pump
Uh-huh.
as my like I have the wait, I don't know what insulin pump you're on, but I have like the tandem. So it's like
Oh,
so I have like the screen. Oh, my Dexcom's not connected right now, but it had normally has like my blood sugar here and then that's like my line. So like I'll like show because it'll turn red when I'm like low. So I'm like my blood sugar is low. I need something. So like yeah, showing totally like definitely having like a tube attached to me. They're gonna be like, oh my God, like whatever you need to do, like they're just they'll just be so understanding. Like so
I was recently asked if I'm a heavy smoker, and I was thinking, what made that person think that I smoke? And then I realized she probably thought it was a nicotine patch.
yes, I've had people ask that. I had I remember I was going on a roller coaster and the worker asked I had a heart condition and I was like I was like why? I was like I know and not that I'm aware of. I like the heart condition and they were like you have like and I'm not sure like what device I guess is for heart conditions, but they're like, "Oh, you have the device." And I was like, I have a Dexcom for type 1 diabetes. I was like, it's a continuous glucose monitor. And they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, and then they asked me, "You're okay to go on the ride, right?" And I'm like, but it was, I've had, or like just random, I've had so many random people just ask, like, "Oh, like, what's on your arm?" Which I don't mind. I know some diabetics,
Oh, same. I don't mind at all. Asking me as many
yeah,
questions as
because then I'm like, I will educate, I will tell you whatever you want to know about type 1
exactly.
diabetes.
Yep.
Ask
And one day
away.
it can save someone's life, you know?
Yes. And I think that's my biggest thing. If people, when they make assumptions, the biggest thing I say is it's so much better if you just ask a question. Like saying, I think there's a big difference between someone saying, you can't eat that instead of, can you eat this?
Exactly.
Because can you eat this is inviting the education when they're stating, you can't eat this, then I feel so like I'm like I don't even want to
Good.
try with you. You have this idea of what diabetes is and it's and I just I don't even want to get anymore. I get in that frustrated zone. But the questions so much more comforting in sharing what type 1 is.
Um, I also wanted to ask you about your Taslim because I use Omnipod.
Yeah.
I love my Omnipod. But I know that Taslim has a really nice IQ. It is a really amazing pump, but so many people they are concerned about the tubing, little tube.
Yes, I considered Omnipod many times because of the no tubes.
Mhm.
I would love the no tubes. I don't find the tubing bothers me in terms of like having it there. It's more like as a girl, like my clothes. Like I feel like I don't know where to sometimes put my pump, or it's like weighing down my clothes, and then I'm like, my outfit doesn't look as good. Um, but I do love when I ha can have my pump showing because I like when people ask questions. Like, what is the closed loop system on Omnipod 5?
Um, so the difference between Tandem and Omnipod is that Omnipod will just increase your basal if it says that your blood sugar is high, as opposed to like correcting your blood sugar. And I
Okay.
know it sounds the same because if it gives you more basal, that means it's kind of correcting your,
But
blood.
it's not like as effective because
But
it's not
it's not as effective. It takes time.
Mhm.
Sometimes it can take over 3 hours to correct your blood sugar. But it is amazing with avoiding your lows because it suspends insulin delivery. If it sees that you're dropping, it will suspend insulin delivery. I wish it was more sensitive. I wish it could give me like more insulin or corrections. But for me, it's still working really well. I love it. You just have to remember to like pre-bolus, which is a problem for me sometimes because sometimes I'm like, no, I want to eat.
Yeah, I think I always forget to do like because my endocrinologist is always like 15 minutes before you eat. I like there's so many times I forget to do that.
Yeah, same.
I've already had like a couple bites of my food and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my God, I
same.
need to get insulin. Like I can't.
Mhm. And you start going up and you're like, ah, my
Oh,
fine.
and it's like that little thing that could have prevented that like spike. And my best is like when I'm cooking. So when I'm in the midst of cooking, I'm like, okay, let's give insulin right now. Like I know it's gonna be ready soon. But like when I'm out to dinner, like I forget. Or when I'm with my friends and I'm just like, it's not on the forefront of my mind. So especially when I want to feel normal around my friends and I'm not just like in like full diabetes mode in my head.
Right.
So thing that I like, I guess, struggle with because I
Mm.
like forget and then I'm like, oh, like that was such a little thing that's so simple,
I
but
feel like we all struggle with pre-bolusing. I feel like we also always struggle with overcorrecting the lows because you get scared. I
Mhm.
personally, even though I've had diabetes for many, many, many years, I still get really scared of lows. And
Mhm.
I always feel like I'm gonna pass out. So I just eat whatever I have in my kitchen.
I am extremely similar with that. Um, I always like I feel them so aggressively, and I know there's a lot of people still that
You don't
don't
feel
feel their lows, which can be like a blessing and a curse because
it.
in the night, like my body naturally wakes me up when I'm low because it's like it can feel like something's not right, so I just wake up. But if you don't feel them, you'll just keep sleeping through.
Right.
Um, but obviously if you have like a continuous glucose monitor, like your alarms would go off, so that's great. But when I'm feeling my low, I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna pass out. And if I don't eat like every like content of sugar I have, like I'm so scared I'm gonna pass out. It's the same thing. So, and then my blood sugar goes high.
Mhm.
Like I've had so many moments. My boyfriend's been so amazing at learning like how type 1 is, and he has my like the Dexcom follow app so he can see my blood sugars. And I've talked to him many times about how like I always eat like too much sugar when I'm low because I'm scared. So there's been times I'm low with him and he's like, "Okay, how many do you have to eat that are gonna like, correct your blood sugar?" And I'm like, "Oh, I should probably eat like this amount." And then he's like, "Okay, just eat that and wait." And I'm sitting there like I feel like I could have more. I'm like, "Are you sure?" And he's
Like
like, "Yeah."
it's so interesting how our brain thinks that eating more will prevent, passing out, even though it just takes some time. Like you just have to tell
I
yourself,
need to like it's
even if you eat the whole kitchen, it's not gonna help you. You just have to give it some time. Whatever you ate is probably enough. You just have to give it some time. I'm gonna ask you this last question. What would you tell people who just got diagnosed with diabetes and they think that they will never be able to enjoy their lives anymore?
that that question is always I find hard for me to answer. Um, because for me, I from the second I was diagnosed, I was like, I'm gonna take this disease and it's my life now. And but I know that that's not how like most people think. And I don't know. I wish I could go back and talk to my 11-year-old. It's like, why were you so chill with having this disease? And you were like, let's just like, oh, this is like, oh, okay, like we're doing that. But I know I've had a lot of burnout the last couple years. Now that I'm in university, now that life is just there's so much more going on, is when I've had those really hard moments like this is my life and like some days I don't want to do it and it's so hard and I've just like laid in bed all day and I don't want to do it. And I think knowing that I live every day, I do it every day, the biggest thing is community, meeting people. Like even so talking to other people, going to events, like SugarDrop really helped me connect with people.
And this
That
being said, everyone who is watching this video, you guys should absolutely follow SugarDrop. Content is amazing,
Thank
really. They will
you.
learn a lot about diabetes.
Thank you. I love doing it so much. And definitely connecting with people is what what made living with diabetes so much easier, and knowing I'm not doing it alone. There's so many other people, and friendships I've made are so special.
Mhm.
And yeah, the main thing that I'm not doing this alone.